So David Johnson, the new Texan coming over from the Cardinals in a trade, has got David Johnson, who finished running back 37 last year, had 94 carries, 345 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 36 receptions on 47 targets for 370 yards through the air and 4 receiving touchdowns. Guys, what are your thoughts around David Johnson?
On to David Johnson. I see a rebound from last year. Last year was bad. He did not mesh in Cliff Kingsbury's offense. He looked a little slow coming off an injury from the year before. He had troubles finding the holes in that offensive line, which was terrible. That offensive line was not good. But most of David Johnson's fantasy value came out of the passing game. I expect the same value from the passing game in Houston, and I do expect a little bit more stout running abilities. That offensive line's a little bit better. They're not world beaters like they were, 6-7 years ago by any stretch, but they're better now than what he had last year. And I think David Johnson still has something left in the tank. I don't think he's washed up. He's better than the RB3 that he finished last year. It's just a matter of, can you get him at the right value? Where are you able to pick him up? In the beginning of drafts, I know Derek and I were doing dynasty drafts. Before the trade went down, if you were lucky enough to grab David Johnson, you were picking him up in like the 14th round. Like, okay, well, if something happens here, we're good. We don't really know if they're going to keep Kenyon Drake or not. And then all the news started hitting. They're keeping Kenyon Drake around. Boom, David Johnson's with Houston, and now it's elevated. And now you're spending, 7th, 6th round capital on David Johnson, which I think is about fair for the return you get. You can pick him up as your RB3 in most cases. And I think you can get value out of that. If you're liking, waiting on quarterback and waiting on tight end and you're hitting the skill positions early, you can build yourself a pretty solid roster with the likes of, a Josh Jacobs and, someone along the lines of, call it a Cortland Sutton and then a couple other guys. And then you get David Johnson in the 6th. Yeah, that's not a bad lineup.
Alex, you had him ranked 17th in our rankings. Kevin, you had David Johnson ranked 16th. I had him all the way up at 7, which, right, wrong, or indifferent, I see a big bounce back this year happening for him, and a couple of reasons for that. One, you just saw Houston give Carlos Hyde a ton of run room, 240 some carries last year, and the fact that David Johnson has the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, and he's a great receiving back. And when you look before the arrival of Kenyon Drake, when David Johnson was in the lineup down there in Arizona, he put up some pretty decent fantasy relevance there, and it all came from that passing work. So I see him getting a ton of receptions. That was part of the reason that he soared up my rankings. I see him getting a bunch of carries, bunch of receiving work, and I think you're going to see a bit of a bounce back. You're talking about a guy that's got something to prove, something to show that he's got something left in that tank. And we started seeing some of that anecdotal stuff come out last year, even when he was still with Arizona, where there was reports coming out saying that he was trying to, return kicks, get on special teams, things like that, to just see the field. And so you're talking about a guy that's got a lot of fight in him and still has some ability, and it'll be very interesting to see how this thing shakes out this year, I think.
It's funny because, this is kind of the life of the NFL running back. You have a great season, you get paid off of it, and then you don't really live up to that hype. I don't know that we've seen guys that live up to the year before they got paid. And obviously when you have a big season, teams are going to want to hang on to that. They think that they can catch that instead of viewing it as lightning in a bottle. They view it as, we've got something here. This was a guy 4 years ago, 2017, where he was probably the consensus number 1 overall pick in a lot of leagues, coming off of a year where he had 16 touchdowns, 1,200 yards, almost 300 carries. This was a guy that you were going to take with the first overall pick. And then I think a lot of people got gun shy off of him because he got hurt right away in 2017, and you wasted your number 1 overall pick on him. So I think there was a little bit of that with him, and he's tried to get that resurgence back. I don't think we're ever going to see him be at those 2016 numbers, but you would think that a change of scenery, a new offense might help him out a little bit. The fact that he probably will be a little bit more of a feature back per se. I don't know that there's like true feature backs anymore, but he's going to be in the more towards the feature back category. So yeah, the receiving work makes him valuable, but I think people are probably still going to overspend on him in this draft, and I would be kind of cautious about where I take him. I don't know that taking him as a true RB2, that might be a downfall for you if that's what you're going to bank on David Johnson being. So I think if you can get him at the right spot, absolutely pick him up, see what he can give you, but don't rely on David Johnson to win you a league.